Okay, now this is like the hand, and we're gonna wrap the belt around it. First, we need to make the shape of the belt. So I go to the above view, and I keep all. Actually, I'll put screen keys on so you can see what I'm pressing. But with Alt, middle mouse and Alt, it will snap to the way that you're looking at. But you can also, of course, click from here, or the numpad number 7 to get. I was rotated, but number 7 will get you to the. Let's rotate that to the side. There we go. I'll apply the transform. So when we're looking up down, we create a new curve called circle, and go to edit mode, and we get a new. This probably for you looks like this. Bottom here we have the curve settings. This tells you how many verts are between these handles. So there's 12 currently. We don't need any because we're making a square. We already have 4 parts. So we set that to 0 and we get a square. Now let's take all these in edit mode and rotate them 45 degrees. And then scale on y-axis to get them to like so. Perfect. Now we have this. This is going to be the size of the belt. You can edit this later, so don't worry about it too much. And we can, in object mode, we can move it somewhere else, so it's not in the center, so we don't need to look at it all the time. As long as we move it on object mode, so the origin of the mesh stays in the center. If you made the mistake of moving it on X in edit mode, in object mode, go to object, set origin to center of mass. Actual volume is both should work in this case, but volume usually is the better option. So it snaps it in the center. Perfect. That was in case you didn't move it in object mode. To get the origin back to the center, now we have the shape of it. We can even name this the belt shape. Then we make a new Bezier curve, and this time the first one was circle. The next one is going to be Bezier. So we get this path, and this will tell us, go to edit mode. With the G, we can move this around. We can also use like this one, get the Bezier curve, rotating it and scaling it. We can get the curve to where we need it. And now we want this one to be shaped like that. So we want it to look like a belt. This tells me where the belt goes, how it loops around the hand. Let's extrude that with E, rotate it, get it around the hand. Like so. Get it like close to the surface. Now we want it to be shaped like that. We do it in the Bezier, the curve settings here. There's a geometry tab. It's probably closed. We click it open. There's the bevel section. We have the option object, profile, or round here. We want to do the object because we want to use that object as the bevel object. The bevel object, I think, has to be a curve. I might be wrong on that, but I don't think meshes work. Now that we select it, we get this result. This belt is too big, it's rotated the wrong way. Oh no, it is fine. From each of these handles, you can change the way they pose, but I recommend always starting with the end position because it'll transfer through the whole loop. It's a whole thing, but with Control T, you can tilt it to get it to be like aligned with the body. Control T, and this one looks already pretty good. But yeah, you're correct. It's a bit too big. We can take all these. There's 2 ways to scale this object down. Either scaling the handles with Alt S, we can scale that. If we want variation, like for an example, this bit is bigger, we would do that with Alt S. But if we want to always use the same thing, we can select the original object here, go to edit mode, and scale it here. We can also change the shape. I'll show it this way. You can see that is that. So you can see if we take these and scale them on X, we make it wider. It becomes wider here too. We can even add a loop here. If we subdivide this, we get an extra loop. We get this handle that we can move. Now there's an extra loop. I pressed Ctrl X to get rid of it. Yeah. So you can have control over the size and it'll be the whole area size. Now let's get back to this one. If we want it to wrap directly around, currently the mesh is like a little bit away from the main object. We can actually slap a shrink modifier on this. This will also work in other models, like non-curve models, but it looks like this. It's shrink wrap. We select it and we need a target. There's some other settings, I'll go over them in a second, but our object is this hand. We select it and boop, it gets transferred inside the mesh. I honestly always just like go through all the options until I find what I want. But the thing that I showed earlier, when the wrapping gets like this, the vertices get squeezed. It looks like this here, but actually like this. But when we apply this modifier, it gets fixed. Because the modifier just like goes after applying the shape from this belt shape thing. So it edits this, but the curve is still following this. It's a bit complicated. It's just the way Blender handles the order of things Blender handles this. This one fixes that issue. So you can see it like without the mesh getting wonky. But don't worry, even if it looks wonky, it is not. So now when we create this, the handles will be, they will still be like away from the surface, but the mesh itself will be projected on the surface. And the way I work with the shrink wrap is usually that I have the shrink wrap and I apply it, and then I keep editing. Like move this, get a second loop here. Perfect. And then I make a new shrink wrap. So I don't use just one shrink wrap. I keep recreating new shrink wrap modifiers to keep updated where the vertices are. We don't see the verts count here. For example, this vert is here, but it's projected there. When I go to object mode and apply this, when I go back to edit mode, it's here again, where it actually like where I visibly see it. So it's easier to edit it now that it's on the where it visibly should be. Now we see here that we can see some of the vertices, but not all of them. By default, the amount of vertices between handle points is 12. Usually that's way too much, especially if you need a lot of handle points, because it will be like between these two, there's 12 points, and between these two is 12 points. To see them, you can set the wireframe visible to see these. But often I end up going back and deleting some of them manually. But I do recommend always going as slow as you can without having like super bad geometry. And whilst doing that, I do recommend having as few handle points as possible. Simply because it's also easier to edit the less you have these. Because if I had a handle point between these and I want to move this up there, I need to move both of these. Whereas if I don't have that and I want to move it there, I just move this one. Super intuitive once you get around it. But this is honestly like the easiest way to keep a consistent shape when doing belts. Especially belts. For these, you should worry about the modeling of the belt, the metallic bits later on, that is fine. Get them in there like later. But for belts specifically that wrap around, this would be the way I would suggest going about it. The curve, if you want to edit individual, like get rid of those words there, you need to first convert it to a mesh. And after you've converted it, you don't have these handle points anymore. So that's why I recommend always, to, once you're happy with your belt, to duplicate it with Control D. No, Shift D. Shift D. Duplicate it. Right click to get it so it didn't move. We get a duplicate here. We hide it. It's just for safekeeping because we lose the curve information once we convert this to a mesh. You do it from Object, Object, Convert, and Mesh. You can convert a mesh into a curve, but usually unless it's just a string of words and edges, no faces, it won't work, or it won't do what you expect it to do. But now that this is a mesh, we can now edit these. Like we can delete these and we can move these around like basic mesh. But if we wanted to move multiple points at once, we would need to go proportional editing. And now we no longer have the mesh keeping its belt, consistent belt size, like with the editing with curves did. So that's why, in case we're like later on the production, we'll realize like, oh, we actually don't want the belt here, we want it somewhere else, and like moving it around, we lose so much the original belt size. Actually, it would be easier at this point, instead of going like the modeling route, to just redo the whole thing. We don't actually need to start from scratch. We have the old, this one, and we can start moving it in here again. Also, optionally, if you do have you have done a lot of modeling and you're like, oh, this is nice shape, but I the same size all along, you can take the original, align it with the new one, and from it get the scales. So this is something I've done embarrassingly often. I've already converted the mesh, but then I want to move the belt, so I kind of do it twice. First to the original curve and then to the mesh in proportional editing to match the curve. Match the original curve. So we get the kind of best of both worlds, where we have the editability, but we can see that how wide should it be in each part of the body. There we go. Like so. If that made sense. I hope it did, and I hope you got your answer. This would be how I would do belts. In other programs, usually especially when you're doing sculpting, there's the option of doing removing parts from the mesh to get a belt. Let's actually subdivide it one more time to get it. Subdivide, and go to sculpting. And smooth it a bit. It's so high res now that it's kind of hard to smooth even. But the way on some other programs you would approach this would be to mask out an area and separate that. Clear mask and do a new mask. Let's do like a nice mask here. Okay, now we've drawn this like belt shape that we want to wrap around the object. Now that we go mask extract, click it, We get the boundary loop threshold. Let's lower it a bit. A solid project to sculpt. Okay. Perfect. And we get the geometry extract solidify. We can add a thickness to it. Woohoo! Maybe we should actually have it on negative, like positive, and with offset get it off the surface. So there we go. We get this. It's kind of hard to see. There we go.